What's an Italian sports car doing on Muscle Car of the Week? Watch and find out. We'll admit it right out of the box. A 1974 Pantera is not necessarily a muscle car. However, it's got a cool story and it's got some elements that tie it directly to some Ford muscle cars, and that's why we decided to feature it this week on Muscle Car of the Week. First of all, this car is very, very significant in the fact that it is an insanely low mileage example of a 1974 Pantera. It has barely been driven since new and is effectively a brand new car. So just the chance to see one of these up close in person at this low mileage level is kind of like stepping into a time machine. But tying back to Muscle Car of the Week, the story on these cars is pretty unique. These were produced by Tomaso in Italy. Now normally when cars are produced, the manufacturer will look for a hole in the marketplace and design and build a car to kind of fill the need to try and sell as many as they can. Back in 1971, there were a bunch of different sports cars a person could buy, but none that had the same elements of the Pantera. For example, this is a mid-engine car, which puts the engine behind the driver but in front of the rear wheels. It also has a ZF transaxle, which means the rear wheels are connected basically right to that transmission, which is also behind the driver. Of course, there were other high-performance exotic cars to buy back in 1971. Now, Ford had some history with mid-engine cars, basically the GT40s, which were race cars from the late 1960s. A couple of those were built for the street, but that was primarily a full-on road race car. They made about 6,000 De Tomaso Panteras between 1971 and 1974, and although these cars have this distinct Italian styling, they're powered by a min-mounted Ford 351 V8. And because of that, you can have this car serviced at your local Lincoln Mercury dealer. It was designed by an American who was working for Ghia at that point. All of these cars that were sold in the United States had Ford part numbers on all the parts. So Ford treated this car as one of its own, even though technically it was manufactured by an Italian company in Italy. The Panteras that were sold in other countries had an Italian parts book that didn't necessarily have all the same Ford part numbers. And at the time, Lee Iacocca was behind this car all the way, and he had thought that mid-engine sports cars were going to be the next big thing. So Ford had success in 1964 with the Mustang being the first one to market in a particular niche, and they thought by having the first mid-engine sports car that they would be ahead of the curve, meaning they would sell more of the cars. Well, unfortunately for the Pantera, initial problems like some build quality issues and electrical problems didn't help the sales. The other thing that fought against this car was the gas crunch of the 70s, where high-performance V8 cars just kind of fell out of favor. But you wouldn't buy this car to be a practical economy car to drive every day either. This thing is designed to look fast, go fast, handle well, and be a personal exotic sports car for the everyman sold through Lincoln Mercury dealerships by Ford. There's a surprising amount of room for being such a small car, and it looks like brand new because it practically is. The odometer is showing 789 miles, and that's actual mileage on this car, which makes me wonder, how could you have a car like this and not drive it? One of the interesting details on this car is the wheels, and these are a cast wheel made by Campagnolo, which is an Italian company that had been making racing wheels for a long, long time. And Campagnolo also makes high-performance racing bicycle parts and other cast aluminum and magnesium parts. And this car is showing its original wheels, and we noted that the fit and the finish on these was pretty rough. But these wheels weren't put on this car to be flashy. Again, they're here to be lightweight and high performance. These cars evolved every year that they were in production, and by 1974, they had most of the bugs worked out when you bought it new. The earlier cars were plagued with different kinds of technical problems, but the Lincoln Mercury dealerships definitely stood by them and would repair them for customers and update them along the way. We like the interior on this car. It's pretty neat the way they laid out the speedometer and the tachometer right in front of the driver, and then down in the sloping center console, you've got the rest of the gauges you need, the ammeter, fuel gauge, temperature. Your controls for air conditioning are right next to you. These cars have kind of an interesting little vent that points to the windshield. You can actually kind of spin those around and aim them to defrost where you need to. These have rocker switches to turn various things on and off, the cooling fans, the air conditioning compartment fan inside the car. But one of the neatest things is the gated shifter. And you see these in a lot of exotic Italian cars. And it just looks very cool. It suggests the precision of the shift linkage on this ZF transmission. It allows you to glide that shifter in and out of gears between those chrome fingers. It's very racy looking and very elegant. This 1974 car is kind of the last of its breed with its close tie-in with Ford Motor Company. After this, Tomaso kind of broke off and they were selling them on their own, and they were no longer sold through the Ford dealers. But it is a very, very cool car, and that 351 cubic inch Cleveland V8 basically had the same specs as the same year Mustang. So in '71, it was basically a Mustang engine, but by 1974, the Ford Mustang had shrunk into the Mustang II, and the compression was down and power was down, and the 351 Cleveland wasn't even available in a Mustang. So that makes this, again, kind of a one-year-only thing. The compression did drop a little bit on these cars, but it still made decent power. Initially, it was rated about 330 horsepower. Over the years, it declined a little bit. But in a lightweight car like this, it certainly made for a great driving experience. Yeah, we know it's not a muscle car, but it has the heart of one. You can feel free to light up our Facebook and YouTube comments with your thoughts about this car, and I promise we'll bring you a regularly scheduled muscle car next week. Thanks for watching.